Hello and welcome. You are going to be building an e-commerce site to sell educational material. Today we'll focus on this call to action with the photo text and the button right here. And I'll keep showing the front end as I speak a little bit more about the build out. So you're going to build a Stripe integration for payments, a photo upload feature, a server and API to interact with your own database, Mongodb, as well as outside APIs. And the entire site, the front end built with React, is going to be responsive. You see how that element went from fixed right there to an relative position on the page. And we have this login here, and that will also change due to the size, and everything is going to change due to the size. So let's get started with this first part, the call to action, where we have automate your future here. Below the video, there is a link to this GitHub. You're going to need to clone this project. So I will go ahead and copy it right here, bring it into Visual Studio Code. Press that button to open up the menu and clone repository, then paste it in and press enter. Now I'll pick a spot for it. I'm going to put it on my desktop because I made a folder called e-commerce tutorial, and I'll select that location. Now don't open it after you clone it. Don't open it down there. We're going to open one specific folder. So we'll open a folder. I will go to where I was. It was desktop e-commerce tutorial. E-commerce is what we cloned, and inside of there is something called session starters. We're going to start from the starter. Now, the next one we start from after lesson 1 and so on, but we'll start with the starter. Now open that up. Okay, get to your terminal, new terminal, write yarn in order to install the node modules. Now with that installed, let's just start it up with yarn start and make sure that it is working. Now this should just be a blank page with e-commerce written on it. There it is, great. We're going to start from here and get to here, but we want to make this first. So this is our call to action, and that's what we will focus on. So inside of e-commerce, we have an src folder. This is where we'll do all of our coding. You can see there's already some dummy data and images inside of there. We have the app.js where everything gets rendered. You could see e-commerce in there right now, but we're going to render what we're about to make here inside of app.js. And now we want to make that call to action on the top. So in src, we're going to make a new folder called components. This will hold all the components, and we'll make another folder inside of there just for our CTA top component. So call to action top is its own folder. And then inside of there, we're going to make a file, and that will be CTA with a capital C top.js. All right, let's go through a little bit of the boilerplate there. It's just import React from React, and then we make a functional component. So const CTA top, and we'll do an arrow function there. After everything's done, export default CTA top. And you need a return statement in here, so we'll do a return statement, and we won't wrap it in parentheses. We'll need to do that in a moment, but we'll do a single line return, says CTA top. And now in order to render this to the screen, we go to app.js. We could remove what's here already. And we'll want to put CTA top in here. And you can see it did auto import from me, but the way you do that is import CTA top from, and then get to there. And make sure this is self-closing, save it. It should compile for you again. Remember, if nothing is happening down here, if it's not recompiling, maybe you stepped away from your computer for a while, you can use Control-C, and then once again type yarn start it up another time. Now on the screen should be CTA top, because that's what we're rendering in app.js here. So we see how that's rendered. Now we want to render, instead of just text saying CTA top, we want something that looks like this. So we need the container for it, the outside of it. We need this photo inside of it. We're going to need another container just for the text so it stays on this side for us. and we'll need a button as well. Let's get started writing that in HTML or JSX as it's called in React. All right, I'll delete what I have after the return right now, open up some parentheses to give myself a little bit of room, and make my first div, and we're going to style everything by class name. So the first class name is Cta-top. Now inside of there, we know we need an image, so let's do a div class name. We won't do an image yet. I'll show you how to use images, just not in the first one here. Cta-top __img. So this is kind of how we're going to do things. We're going to label basically the entire component something, and then everything after it will be, all right, this is the image relating to Cta top, and you'll see why that's important later when we start doing some more Sass code. Now that actually can self-close because we won't be putting anything inside of there quite yet. So I self-closed that one, and we'll move on to another div with a class name, and let's do that text box next. So Cta top __ text box. And then let's divide that into the things that we want in the text box, which was the title, 2 different lines, and a button. Okay, so we'll have a div with class name Cta top __ text box -- headline. That's the first part of it. And I'm going to grab all of this so we could code a little bit faster. Inside the headline will be the headline. Now make sure you follow this right here. You don't want to put anything inside the div. That's where the text will go for automate your future. Let me actually just write that in there so we don't make this mistake. Automate your future. That's what's being hidden inside of this div right here. Next, outside of that div, we'll have another div with a class name Cta top __ text box -- story. And inside of there is where we'll put our story. And remember, we have 2 different lines, so we'll have 2 different stories. So we have a story there and a story there, meaning the 2 sentences that we put in. And you know, let's write those in too now. What we had there was, did you know 25% of business owners work over 60 hours per week? Question mark. Learn to work smarter by leveraging technology. Period. Okay, if you don't want to write all this stuff, you can go ahead and just type random stuff here for now, because we will do this programmatically. You won't have to actually write this stuff in later on, but I figure mine as well. Next, I'll do in this 2-week program. So now we have our 2 text box stories, but we know we have one more thing here, and it's actually an input, because we're going to make a button. So we'll have an input, we'll have a class name equal to Cta -top __ text box -- button. The type needs to equal submit. This is important. Make sure you do this part. And the value, now that is whatever we want it to say inside the button. I'm going to have it say, learn the alchemy of automation. And after all that, we just close it, and we have our input. Now we have everything on this page that we want to style. If we go and take a look at the page, it's going to be pretty ugly. But everything is on the page. Automate your future. Here's our first line. Here's our second line. Here's our button. That's the same thing that's right here. So let's get to styling it. Now we're going to get right to styling. We're not going to go into Sass today or SCSS today. We're just going to style right away here. So I'm going to make a styles folder inside of src, call it styles. And inside of there, I'm going to have something called reset.css. And this is the sort of thing I would do at the beginning of every project. So what I do here is I select everything. I select everything before, and I'll select everything after as well. And in there, I just want to get rid of the margin. So put that to 0. I want to get rid of the padding, put that to 0. I want to inherit any border box, so box sizing I mean. So box sizing, we'll put that to inherit. And finally, overflow X. This is one that I like to start hidden. So I'm just going to start it hidden, and if we need it somewhere, we'll notice it and we'll be able to allow it. But I like hiding it because it becomes more of a problem than not. So HTML, let's have a font size change. Now the font size change has to do with us working in rem. Rem gets its size according to the font size. What we're going to do is work with 1 rem equaling 10 pixels, meaning we're going to change the font size from 100% to 62.5%, meaning that a font size of 16, like it usually is now a font size of 10, meaning 1 rem is 10 pixels. And we'll work with rem a bunch. If you didn't understand that right that second. Finally, we have the body. We'll have box sizing, and that'll be border box, and font family. Now font family, I already have a font in here from Google called Open Sans that we're using, and it's imported already. But just in case, after it, comma to sans serif. That one's already there. You won't have a problem getting that one from Google or anything like that. Okay, so that is done. And in app.js, we're going to import it. Import. We'll go over to /styles/reset that we just made. Now before I save, I want to show you what it looks like now. This is what it looks like now. We'll save it. We did our reset, and now there it is. It got much smaller because of what we did. And there's no padding at all on the side or the top anymore. So we'll create all of our padding. We will not depend on the browser to have a certain amount of padding for us. I'd rather that all be at 0, padding and margin. Now let's make it look good. We're going to make something else in the styles folder. And remember, we're running in CSS now, and we will convert this. So if you're here to learn Sass, just follow along. We will convert all of this. The next thing we'll make is called Cta-top.css. So here's the Cta top styling. We'll write .cta-top here. We'll have a position of relative, a display of flex, a margin top, 4 rem. We'll be using 4 rem a lot. It seems to have looked pretty good. Justify the content to center, and also align items to center. All right, we shouldn't see anything yet because we need to put it into the app. So we'll import that as well. ./styles/cta-top. Save that. So that centered everything, and that's kind of the cool thing about Flex containers. Let's take a quick look at it. We have this Flex container here. Oh, make sure I get to it. There you are. There's the text box. Here we are, Cta top. Now we can kind of see what everything's doing. We have our display of flex, and that's making it so that we could use justify content and align items in a certain way. If we take flex off, it should only kind of just go to the left, I think. Yeah. Okay, so we're using our display of flex. We have a margin top. You can see it up there. If we take it away, we justify the content. So that moves it off of the left to the middle. And we have the align items, which should take it from the top to the middle of the section. But since it has no height, it doesn't much matter. Now, if we did give it a height of, say, 50 rem, you could see it's going to center within that. And just to prove that, let's do a background color of, how about, yeah, there you go. You could see how big the outside is here, and it's right in the middle. So let's keep moving through this. The CTA top is good. So dot CTA dash top underscore underscore img. Let's work on that one. So here we're going to do a display of flex again. A padding of 3 rem, a width of 85%, so not the entire page width, just a little bit small there. A height 34 rem, and now we're going to add a background image. So the background image, and this is what is going to make the image inside of everything. So background image, we're going to use a linear gradient. If you haven't used this before, they're really cool, and we'll take a look at it real soon. First write to left, then we will comma to a color. The first color is actually clear, so you can just write transparent if you want here, but I'm going to do a hex code for it. Actually, it's more than a hex code. We'll do FFFFF, and then we'll make it clear. There's our transparent color. So that was FFFFF00, if you can't see it now. Yeah, it doesn't look very bright. Okay, and we'll put that at 15%. Next, we pick our second color, which I have a slate black that we're going to use here. It's like a gray blackish thing. It's nice looking. So 29303B, and I wanted to reach that slate black at the 40% mark. So what I'm saying here is I want a linear gradient. I want it to start clear, and at 15% start changing to the slate black, which needs to be 100% slate black by the 40% mark. And we'll comma after that. And on the next line, I'm going to put in a URL for the image. The image URL is pretty easy to get to, just .. That goes up one into images, and the one we want is called work. There we go. And let's save that right now to see what it looks like. Perfect. This is kind of what we're looking for. We're looking for that change. You can see we have it in our regular app here, where that change happens over a little bit of a little period here into the just slate background. That's what we're getting right here. We can see the change happening into the slate background, and the picture is there. You can see that there's much more to the picture here, and let's do that real quick by changing the background size. So background size will be cover. Okay, cool. That looks a lot better there, and it looks a lot more like this one, doesn't it? Our image is set. It's time to work with our text box. And a cool thing about our text box is we're going to use absolute positioning to take it out of the flow. Everything goes after each other or before the other element. Absolute positioning means I can move it wherever I want. So let's get started on that in the text box. So down here, .cta dash top underscore underscore text box. Position, change that to absolute. That's great. That did put the text box where we want it. We do want to move it over now. We want to separate it into sections, and there's a bit more styling to do. But this background picture is looking pretty much like that background picture. Really, really good. Let's use a display of grid. So we could set our grid template rows. And if this is a lot, I'm going to throw a lot at you at the beginning so we could learn through repetition. So even if you're just copying along and just grasping a little bit of the picture, that's completely fine. This is a very long course where we'll go through things over and over. So grid template rows, we're going to use 4 equally spaced rows. So we're going to say 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. Those are 4 equally spaced rows. FR is kind of like the free remaining space. That's what I like to look at it as. It says go ahead and take up the free remaining space there. Let's take a look at that, see if that changed anything. Yeah, you can see that changed everything just a little bit there. Let's move it over. I definitely want to move it over to the left a bit, so I'm going to use a width of 45% rather than the full 100. Okay, that definitely cut it down a bunch. Now we need to move it over towards the left. And that's pretty simple. We'll just type in left about 10%. That looks good. Just to see this a little better, I'm going to set a color for inside of here. The color, I'll just use white, so just F7, F7. This is a gray, basically. It's a very light gray. Yeah, now we can see things a little bit better. And let's set a height to this box too, because it seems still pretty crunched. Let's set a height at 30 rem. There we go. Now we're starting to get there. Doesn't look exactly like it, but it really does look a lot more like it. So let's fix our headline next. We'll go down to, let me grab this. Cta top text box, because I'm going to need all of that. Dash dash headline. The headline will have a font size, let's say 3.5 rem. We'll take a look. Yep, that's much bigger. Let's also do our story. So we'll take you, story. The color, actually, you know what? We set the color up there. I won't set it down here, but we will set a font size here. That will be 1.6 rem. And that's a cool thing about CSS is things get inherited. So since this is inside of the text box, it already has a color set to it. Save that one. Cool, that's starting to look really good. But the button takes a lot more work, and we want it to have all those effects and everything like we had, where it changes color. So just bear with it. Let's get this button styled and looking awesome. Cta Textbox Button. First thing is to set a height. I'm going to set the height to 3.5 rem. Same thing I did for the font size of the headline. Okay, now it's a little bit smaller there. Let's do a width. We'll set the width at 36 rem. Okay, and now it's kind of lining up with that, and that's kind of what I was looking for when I was doing it. Then we'll have a font size, and that'll be 1.6 rem. That's good to set just to make sure this font size stays how you want it to be. Let's make it a little thicker with a higher font weight. Bolder would be the word. I'll use 600. 800 would be very bold. This is kind of like medium bold. And there we are. We're in medium bold there. It looks pretty good. Now we'll set the background color. And that's going to be a blue color, and I have it already picked out. It's 1 DACE3. That's the blue color that we're going to be using in the background. Cool, it's there. Let's change the color in here so we could get the text, the placeholder text to be white. Well, not white, but that F7 color that we used, so it matches. Cool. Good, good, that's looking great. Now I want to round the borders. And you know what, let me show real quick. The borders are right here, 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 and here. So these corners here, I want them to be more rounded. And it's a pretty easy thing to set. All you need to do is write in border radius. And then pick a pretty high amount of rem. I'll put 10 rem. And there's our circular button there, looking good. Next, let's change our border. Now, our border is going to be none. And that's a big change too. If you have a border here and it's a little bit of a different color than what's behind it, it could really look funky. So we got rid of the border. The next problem is that outline when it gets clicked. I hate that, and we could figure out other ways to make it look cool. So we're just going to also write outline. None. Now when we click it, there's no outline. Perfect. We have to give some sort of feedback though, so let's change the cursor to a pointer. Yes, I did that. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in this mode here. Okay, now we're getting the feedback of that cursor pointer there. And finally, we can work on that cool hover effect. So here we are. I'll take all of that, paste it, right, 2 dots, hover. Inside of there, we could do our hover effect. We'll change the color to be the background color. And we'll change the background color to be the color. Great. It is happening kind of weird though. I mean, it's going so fast. So what we want to do is create a transition on this. So in your Cta top text box button under cursor, we're going to do a transition property. We'll just write all and then 0.4s for seconds. Now you could say certain things to do a transition with, whether it just be the background color or something like the opacity. You could just do, I'm just going to do a transition of everything. So the color and the background color will both change due to that all setting there. Now this should take 0.4 seconds, and it does. Now that's a lot smoother, looks a lot better. And you could experiment with this, maybe set it at 4 seconds and see how long it takes to change then. Oh boy. And it's a good way to look at your animations and stuff like that, just in case you're doing something wrong. You can kind of see it inside of these really slow transitions. But I'm going to go back to 0.4 seconds. And let's take a look. This does look pretty good. This looks almost exact. We did a really good job here. I think the only thing bugging me is that the text box isn't really in the middle of this container here. And we can fix that by going into the text box itself. Where are you, text box? Here we are, top text box. And let's align the items. So align items, we'll move that to the center. There we are. Now we're perfectly centered. This button changes, and I'm happy with our call to action. This is great. If you followed along this far and you got this far, this really, really looks good. Good job, and we're going to keep going. So follow me to the next lesson. I'll see you there.